Hello everyone, this is Brea Soren Fonte. This is my channel. I'm not really doing a big channel. I'm just probably going to do videos if I just see a need or if I want to. Basically, I'm really going to do a video about Creole people from Louisiana, and it's something that I'm really excited about. I also wanted to say hi to everyone from the Golden Sphere. Hi everyone. So I'm not going to get into the history as this video isn't really about the history. There are videos and books as well as documents that are correct on Creole history of Louisiana people. And I would not suggest just watching or looking at videos, that's fine, but reading documents and books can be very rewarding too. I have made a playlist though that I'm excited about. It's mostly to make content as well as info more available to everyone. And on there are videos about Louisiana Creoles and Cajuns, history, and some facts about the people and culture. So this video is going to be me talking about racial components of Louisiana Creoles, mainly as I'm not going to talk about the Louisiana Cajuns as much. Maybe not at all. It depends. So, when it comes to the Creoles, I noticed a lot of people on the internet claiming and saying that Creoles are African American or Black and or Black people. Now, I'm not worried or surprised that people say this because people say Creole is what you say when you don't want to say that you're Black. Now, for me, that is a very unnecessary statement, but just want to talk about this and give my perspective. Okay, so when people talked about Creole history, when they did, they would say some Creoles can be Black. When that is said, usually it implies that most are not. Like, if I were to talk about Ireland, right? And if I were to say some can be Black, that is implying that most are not Black. Or African, as not all Black people, as we know, are so like not all Black people in America or in the world are from Africa. We know this. So if that was a point that was made in 2022, why is it that like people are saying most African Americans um this is something like, so why are people saying that that most Creole people are African Americans, right? Like, this is something that I've heard from non-Creole people a lot on, YouTube and internet. I really haven't really heard it in real life, but I just wanted to address this here. I understand that some Creole people married Black though. Also, I want to preference this about whenever there is a person that has 30 to 25% of like African or Black DNA, and like let's say they marry a white person, or a good portion of these people married um, non-African or non-Black people, those people they don't get a lot of publicity, I don't believe, and they don't get a lot of attention, right? Because they're not in the Black community, so they're not going to get that much attention or that much, um, you know, like just drama or commotion sent their way. But I noticed that it's whenever it seems to be that whenever it's a biracial who has like a larger African mixture to them, there seems to be more attention brought to them and drama about them. So to me, this, and if this biracial person or mixed person stays, like if they marry a Black person, you know. And I think that's the reason why we hear so much about like mixed people from African Americans and Black people in America, is because like the people that you're hearing about, they're not marrying like outside of their race or maybe the same race as they are. They're marrying Black people, so it's like of course Black people are going to talk more about them, you know. So that's, to me, that's normal. And but it's just that, there's a lot of, you know, drama surrounding it at times, and there's a lot of, questions and sometimes even conspiracies around them in the Black community. And it's something that I noticed. So of course, like whenever a Creole person marries, like if they're in the Black community, they're going to get more attention and more, when I mean more attention, they're going to get a lot more sent their way, publicly at least. It's probably going to be more publicly and probably behind the scenes, whereas if they're married in another community, it's probably going to be more behind the scenes. Like we never really know. But when it comes to DNA, I'm not a biologist, or I haven't studied anthropology, so I'm going to get right into the video. So, when it comes to Creole people, I noticed that I hear a lot of people who are not Creole say that, oh, Creoles are mostly Black or Creoles are mostly African American. And I even hear some Creole people say it sometimes, I guess. And I wanted to put two and two together for you guys so you guys can know. Basically, this is just my belief of it. And number one, again, like Creole isn't necessarily a racial identifier, but it is saying that, oh yeah, like it started because of a mixing. Like the mixed people created it. So the culture is mixed because the food is evident, the way they speak Creole is evident of that there's a mixing. But um and you also have a lot of people who are not Creole claiming to be Creole, and they're saying that, oh, I'm Creole because because my great great grandmother is Creole, or I have a Creole mixing. And I just wanted to give you guys an example of why this is not a good thing to say, and why it's not, why it's invalid, not invalid, but why it's incorrect. And this is one thing I will say, preference this by, is that in America, in the United States, when America went into Louisiana, they were very, very confused when it came to how things are run, because it was more of a Latin system there. So if you were a slave or if you were in servitude to someone, you could work your way up out of that. You could pay other people's way. So you could pay and get your relatives out of slavery if you wanted to. And so what happened was but this was happened, but this was way before America bought Louisiana. But when America bought Louisiana and they went in there, they were very confused. Um, there's this video on YouTube. It's called The Creole Controversy. And in that documentary, it showed how when they put the white and Black dialectic onto Louisiana Creoles and Cajuns, it showed how you had white people who had Anglo-Saxon ancestry who were like American, because remember Louisiana and it was separate from the rest of America during that time. You had them claiming to be Creole too, so there were white people claiming to be Creole, and they were even fines given out to people if they pretended to be Creole, because there were benefits. Like Creole people, they just weren't this tribe of people living like nomads. They had establishments, they had their own communities, they had like their own cities even, and they were had their own churches, synagogues, things like that, their own schools. Like, so they were established, and they had, and some of them were sent to France out of the country to study, and came back more educated, and so they used that education to kind of help. So they used that education to help um, basically bring, Creole people up in a sense. But and also you had and so there was like a lot of benefits to being Creole, because being part of the group and everything. And they were fined, like white Americans were fined if they were caught pretending to being something that they weren't. And also on that video, on the documentary, there's also a African American woman saying that, "Oh, I was brought up around Creole people, and I know how to speak a little Creole, and I'll be in the grocery store around Creole people, so I guess I'm Creole." And so you did have a lot of that as well. And the thing is that in America, because there is not a, like, saying that everyone is black and white is not definitive. It's not definitive at all. It's very loose, and it's extremely broad, and it's kind of shanky, you know? And so basically, a lot of times white and black people, they kind of go in and out of spaces that they don't belong, and that's not native to them as well. But the point that I wanted to make, um, or the full spectrum of what I'm trying to say here is um, that there are a lot of people who say that this about mixed race people, and they'll say that, or not just mixed race people, about Creole people, that Creole people aren't, what they are, and they're this, they're that, and they're the other. And one thing that I wanted to say is that Creole is an identity already. It's something that has already been established. It's something that's already been claimed. So that's like me going and saying I'm Mexican, or going in and saying that I'm Puerto Rican simply because I have a grandmother or a great grandparent, or just any grandparent, grandfather that's Mexican or Puerto Rican. If this is the case for you, that means that you have a Creole admixture. That's what that means. Or that you have a Creole mixture, you know? And that's just and that's okay, like that's normal, like for example, like I am mostly Spanish, French, German, African, and Indigenous. My grandmother is and my great grandmother is actually fully Indigenous. I don't want to say which, I know what she is specifically because she spoke the language and everything, but I'm not going to talk about that here because this isn't really about me. I want to give as little information on myself as possible, but you know, and I know that I have an Icelandic admixture and a Papua New Guinean admixture to me, So that's just something that I know that is unique to me, as a Creole woman, you know, or and that's something that I have, and also African American. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were some people who were, Anglo white American as well in my ancestry either. And so my point in saying this is really getting getting back to like the how like some um black people and some white people back in those days pretended to be, something that they weren't. and how it was okay because Creole basically, during when America came into Louisiana, they basically kind of forced, like, did what the British did to the Scottish, kind of, like, I guess, if I'm just wanting to, because I guess I watched Braveheart the other day, so that's the reason why that like that's on my mind. But they kind of just like gave their identity like up for grabs. So you had black people who were American, or black people who were not Creole, pretending to be Creole, white people who were not Creole pretending to be Creole. You had all these different issues. And my point in saying some of this is, like, that's fine if that's, well, that bit isn't okay, because it's not right. Um, Saying that most Creole are mostly black or African American or just monoracial people is wrong, basically. It's not right. It's not truthful. It's not honest. Um, because Creole people can be anything, you know? You have Creole people who are Spanish and French, or who are German, or maybe some other things, you know? Because I know that there are not just like three types of, white people. There are different types of Creoles people as well. But if your ancestry did not basically go all the way back to a certain date, then that means that maybe there's a chance that your ancestors were not, originally Creole. If your ancestry doesn't date back to Louisiana, to a certain date, because that's when that's when all of this was being created, basically, you know, and you have Black Creoles as well, and you know that is true, and you know, but I just want to get to this, like, for example, if a so like if a Black person, right, marries a Creole person that is Black, that means that there is a cultural exchange. So they both racially, if that's what you want to base it off, because they look the same, I guess. If you're just basing it off of looks, racially they are Black, right? And the reason why I say basing it off of looks is because not all Black people who are from Africa, who don't have any admixture that we know of, or just we know for a fact, as far as science goes, they don't have admixture. There's different types of Black people even in Africa, like Nilotic, or like the Nilotes, and I think there's something else. I don't really know. Like I said, I it's slipping my mind, and I don't study this stuff, on a regular basis. So I know that there's different types of Black people, but if a Black person in America marries a Creole person, that's a cultural exchange, not really a racial exchange. It's similar to, like, if a Senegalese person marries a Haitian, you know? Um, they're, as far as we know, that is a cultural exchange, you know? And, that's the same. So you're still, so in that case you could say that you're multicultural, and we have a lot of multicultural people here. We have people who are French and you know Polish. You have people who are Scottish and Irish mix, Italian and British. So for Black people, it can be the same thing. You can have like two people who are of the same race and have two different cultures. So there's a multicultural family, and that's always fun, I'm pretty sure. For people who are Black and of two different cultures, they would know better than me if that's fun, or how that lifestyle is, but we have a similar experience too, because not only are we multiracial, but we're also multicultural. But I want to use um, Hispanic people specifically Mexicans, to kind of illustrate where I'm going with this video. So, in so for example, right? This is for me talking about how people say today that most Creole people are Black or African American, and we know that's not true, right? So if if Haitian people, now this is just in make believe, so this is just me coming up with this. This isn't real, so no one get triggered. I don't know why you would get triggered, but just, for purposes. If Haitian people migrated to Mexico, right? And over the span of a couple hundred years, they became a mostly brown population or even a dark brown population with some features that are traditionally Mexican features. We know how most people, for the most part, look in Mexico, regardless of their own mixture as Mexicans. But what if Haitians, like a lot of them, migrated there and mixed with the people that are there after? Are they still Haitian or Mexican, or have they created a new race of people with those mixtures? To me, when to me, we wouldn't say that those people are Mexican, nor would we say that they're Haitian, but a different race, as they are mixed and are homogenized. So, to some of you who don't know what that means, my best example of what a homogenized society would be is Ethiopians, Hondurans, sorry, in when it comes to like countries, Ethiopia, Honduras, Madagascar, Reunion Island, and Mexico. I think Reunion Island is a country, I'm not sure, and Puerto Rico. So they are all mixed but have intermarried. Um, and now they are mostly mixed. So now they're a mostly mixed population, having similar mixtures, making them now, for the most part, the same. Like, not to be repetitive, but they have the same admixtures as a society, you know? And they look pretty uniform. Not to say that there needs to be a uniform, look or anything, but they all have the same admixtures genetically. So Creoles are mixed, some white and some African specifically. So the definition of of if you Google what race are Creole people, it will tell you that the meaning of it is a person who has mostly French, Spanish, German, African, and Indigenous ancestry. So if you are mixed with Creole, that means you have a Creole admixture, and it means that that's part of your aura, that means that's part of your essence, right? So going back to the make believe people in Mexico, um, the people mixed with Haitian and Mexican, even if you are mixed um, with African or Black, or like African and Black, you've brought up in like two different cultures. So what this means, going back to the Mexican and Haitian, example, so this means that there are a smaller population of Mexicans now, and that scientists would say that the population now in Mexico, due to migration and intermarrying, is a different one than the previous population that was there, which were Mexicans. So the population to like there now are not Mexican nor Haitian. But but putting a lot of emphasis on Mexican because it is Mexico, right? So they migrated to Haitians migrated to Mexico, intermarried, and then created a new group of people that scientists and anthropologists and would not look at them and say, or biologists would not say that, oh, these are Mexicans. This is a different group of people in Mexico. Just like almost the same as, you know how over time in history you had people that migrated over time and the demographics changed. It's literally the same thing. Um, so a lot of people saying that Creole is African, being that there are roughly 20 million Creoles around the world, the last time I checked, is really weird to me. And it makes me think about the phrase that Black people come up with to manipulate Creole people to call themselves Black back in the day, because they would say that, oh, you think you're better, oh, you think you're more significant. And it's just, on the people who say that to mixed people who are Creole, it's just I don't get it and I don't want to understand it. It's not my job to understand it. But all I know is that it's disrespectful because you're not respecting an entire group. And that's why for me, like, sometimes it's difficult, you know, with African American, Black people, and even white people, or just any race, Hispanic people, Asian people, because it's like if something happens, they want to call you Black, or they want to say that you're just African. And there's literally no respect or no, acknowledgement of what you are as a person. And I think that that's very rude and I think that's very disrespectful. So, like, and they always all and I notice that they always make it a point to confuse people and or try to confuse people and try to muddy the waters a little bit by saying that, oh, like you're this and you're that. And then I think that's the reason why MGMs, you know, who are like maybe have white Anglo ancestry and African American ancestry. I think this is the reason why they might struggle as well, is because there is no definitive, like when it comes to Black people and white people, they're not definitive groups. They're just not. Like in America, at least, I can say this. They classify everybody under one umbrella, and the only way that you can be respected is almost it's as if you're under a cultural umbrella. So that means that so it's like you have to be culturally, socially different, speak a different language, be like basically make white people feel uncomfortable. To not saying that all white people feel uncomfortable if you speak a different language or have a different cultural background and listen to different music, but it's like you have to be noticeably different for them to say, oh yeah, you're different, oh yeah, you're a different culture. But it's like whenever you are like an American person or you have that American ancestry, it's like, okay, you're American, you're not some different culture, you're not from a different cultural background, so let me put my American perspective onto you, basically. And because you're American too, you're going along with it, or like it's like you have to go along with it because this is the way we are, this is the way we think, you know, and unless you make it clear that no, I'm different. And it's like that should be, in my opinion, that should be enough. Like you should be like, no, that's not true, that's not right. But in this case with within America, it's like you have to like use your culture to be as leverage almost. And I think that's so pathetic. And I think that's so sad that you have to deal with people this way, and it's really remedial. And but that's just really the truth of the factor. And so, and they'll even try to confuse it, like if a Creole person marries a biracial person, like if a mixed Creole marries a biracial person, it's like I'm pretty sure they'll even try to confuse that, because it's like, wait, that biracial person or that mixed race person is black, or that MGM is black, and you as a Creole, you're married to that biracial person or MGM. So now they'll probably say your kids are mostly black, and they might even will try to go that route, and when that's not true, we know that if two mixed people marry each other, their kids are mixed, so it's not, you don't have to go to Harvard or any university to figure that out, basically. But apparently for some people you do, and for some people they don't know any better, which I think they do. They're just lazy. I'm like I said, I'm not trying to be nice right now. I'm just saying that this is what they do. And basically, so when it comes, like, going back to Creole people, what that means is that the actual Creole people that are real, like the people who does who take that, or not even take because it's already theirs, the people who have that classification, that means that, like, let's say going back to the Mexican example, that just means that the population of Creole people, or the population of Mexican people, has shrunk. That's all that means. It doesn't mean that these new people are Creole, because that right there is an anomaly in itself, because it's like, what if, like, I went to Europe, and we Americans went to Europe and we started calling ourselves Europeans, or if we went to Africa and started calling ourselves Africans, simply because we married a few of them. We married a few Africans, or we married a few Europeans, so now we're European. Like, that doesn't go. That's not how things work in the real world, and that's not respectful to the people who are actually European, and to the people who are actually African, and to the people who are actually Mexican, and also, and in this case, for real world, because the Mexican analogy was just make believe, but in this case, it's not respectful to the Creoles to say that, it's very disrespectful, and it's very rude, and it's frankly quite mean. I think it's very mean, and I don't like it. I don't like that people are going around saying that they're Creole simply because someone in their family married a Creole. Those people are trying to separate themselves from their African ancestry, in my personal opinion. Versus if a mixed person says, I'm mixed, you have to ask them, what are you mixed with? And they get to tell you, oh, I'm mixed with white, or I'm mixed with Scottish and Nambian. Or if you're American, I'm mixed with black and white. Those people are embracing their African ancestry. The people who are going around calling themselves Creole, you're trying to distance yourself from it, in my book, personally. Like, and I think it's evident. I think a lot of people would agree that that is the case. And so, if you're going around calling yourself Creole, in my opinion, I think those people were the ones that were intentionally trying to separate themselves from, Black American or African American, and trying to take on a Creole identity, knowing that some Creoles can be Black, some Creoles can be African. And so, they are using that as a catalyst, or as a way in the door to say, oh, well, since Black people can be Creole too, I'm Creole. Like, no, no, that's not true, because Creole people and even Black American people have a different ancestry. Like, you have Black Cajuns, and those Cajuns came with the Cajuns that came from Canada. During slavery, were you in Canada? No, you weren't. You were in America. Majority of you guys were in America. And I think you should respect your history. You should respect your personal history that your ancestors experienced. And that's the whole point of, being part of a culture, being part of a race of people, being part of a group, being part of a society, is that you get to respect your the people that came before you, and you get to respect the people that are your ancestors. And that is so important, because there's a saying, if you don't know your history, then there's no future for you. If you don't know where you come from, then your future is going to be bleak. And so it doesn't make sense. And so I wonder how, so imagine how it would be if a person is trying to change their history entirely. They're trying to change their whole, like, their whole family history, you know? And that's what I see in a lot of in a lot of spaces sometimes. And not here, but like I see a lot of people saying that, oh, like, I'm this and I'm that, and I'm like, is that respective of your history? And again, like, if, let's say, you have two mixed people from different cultural backgrounds marry each other, those people are still, they're still, in that case, that would be like a cultural exchange. Like if an American married a Puerto Rican, or if an American person, or a Black American, sorry, a mixed race person married, so a mixed race person married like a Creole person, like that Creole person that you married, they might speak French. You might eat some food. Like, for example, I know someone personally in my family is mixed with a different culture as well, with the Hispanic culture, and we were all eating together, and she was watching me eating food that was traditionally um, Creole, and she was like, "How can you eat that? That's so gross." And I was like, "It tastes good. This is how you're supposed to eat it." And she was just looking at me because in her culture she eats something different. You know, it's probably the same like the same main ingredient, but just it's cooked differently. And she was like, "Ew, that's gross." But everybody else, we were all enjoying it. We were all eating it, and we just laughed about it. We thought it was funny. But we didn't bring it up as like, "Oh, it's because you're different," because we all knew that. It's just assumed. But yeah, she was just like, "Oh," and I told her to try it. She tried it, and she was like, "It's an acquired taste." And I was like, "Okay." Like, okay, sure. But yeah, like, that means that, it's a cultural exchange. And depending on what you're mixed with, it can be a multiracial, even more multiracial family, or even more mixed family, and that's positive. And if you're a Black person marrying a Black Creole, you have even more culture, to go off of. If you have kids, those kids have even more culture. But it doesn't make you, it's not correct to say, like, oh, like, I'm that now, and, like, let's say, even in, like, discrimination, if someone is going through, like, this, like, even the same, I don't care if it's the exact same bad treatment or discrimination that you're going through, that doesn't give you the right to then go on and change their race. You don't get to change their race just because somebody is going through the same thing that you're going through. That's wrong. And that also changes the dynamics of what you and that mixed race person are going through. And even if it's a Black person that's of a different culture, you don't get to say, "Oh, you're Black American now, you're just like me." No. And that's what makes it so rough, and what makes it so annoying, because now you're adding a new discrimination. So not only are they dealing with the discrimination that you all are dealing with as a collective, as a Black American, a mixed race person, and a person that's probably from the Congo or from Haiti, now we have to deal with this person that's trying to erase us, basically trying to say that we're all like them. And it's like, no, we're not, honey. No, we're not. It's fine. Like, we're all being treated badly, or we're all having this incident at work or in the restaurant, or and it might not even be because of race. It could just be because that's a bad spot, or like a terrible boss, or maybe just like bad coworkers who know your trigger, or they think you're going to get triggered about something, so they're just going to use it against you. Like, that's a thing as well on its own. But to say that, oh, this makes you this now, is wrong. Like, it's not right, you know? And so that's just the point that I wanted to give across about Creoles. It doesn't mean that the people who are walking around, because I've also heard people say, oh, the Creole people that are there now, they don't look anything like the Creole people that existed. That means, and this is not to take away from those people's ancestry, because that Creole is also in their ancestry, but also there is something else. There's some other thing. There's African American probably in your ancestry, but you're walking around calling yourself only Creole, you know? Like, you're Creole and you're Black American or African American or wherever you are. That needs to be stressed as well. Even people like that, you need to embrace all of your mixtures, all of your sides, not just one, because and what that means, and because that's literally stealing. Like, that's like gentrification. Like, like literally, that is more like gentrification. Like, you're taking the label of a totally different group just because that most of them are heavily mixed, and so you're hoping that that will trickle down to you, and it's like, no, that is a false concern. You should not have that concern. You should just feel good. You should just feel comfortable being who you are, and leave it at that. And if people don't like it, then those people might be racist. Those people are actually racist if they don't like you for that. So if they don't like that you're embracing yourself as a different type of person, that's what it is. That person you need to stay away from. Don't entertain those people. And what that means for Creoles is that the population has shrunk, because it doesn't make sense, right? Like, years ago, whenever they would talk about Creoles and show pictures of Creoles, they would show a specific type of person. Now you have people saying all Creoles are Black. How did they go from being mixed white and Black to all Black? Like, so basically, how did they go from being mixed people, white people, and African people, so European people, multiracial people, and Africans, to just all Black Americans, or just all African? Like, that doesn't make any sense, because you don't go from being, if somebody goes from being, if a culture, if Creole people go from being, so if Creoles go from being African, if they go from being African mixed and mixed with that, and Indigenous even, and European to just African, then that means that someone's lying and on them. It means that somebody isn't telling the truth and they're not being honest. And if that's the case, let's say, for example, let's say that's a fact, right? You know, then that means that the actual Creole people, the population has shrunk. That's what that means. Or it has become smaller, or it's declined. That's all that means. It doesn't mean that all these new people are Creole. And that's just a point that I wanted to get out, or just make that point. And this isn't to be, I'm not worried about how people feel about it, because I feel like the right people will, you know, understand what I mean and where I'm coming from. But I just wanted to make this quick video for you guys. Um, if you if you're listening, thank you for watching the video. Um, I just want to say hi everybody again from the Golden Sphere. Um, Thank you and bye.